After San Francisco last week recalled its district attorney for seeming soft on crime, one of our next guests says it's time Democrats fully embrace public safety as a progressive cause.
Because while Juneteenth symbolized the end of slavery, it did not ensure freedom, not by a long shot. The post-Civil War era known as Reconstruction often gets short shrift in our history books, but it has urgent lessons for our own time. Among other things, Reconstruction reminds us that progress is not inevitable or self-perpetuating. It was a time of progress and backlash when Americans of African descent briefly served in Congress and state legislatures, but also when white terror groups like the KKK surged in violent resistance to even the prospect of multiracial democracy. And let me clear up some memes you might have seen. Yes, the black legislators were Republicans, members of the party of Lincoln, while the white South was overwhelmingly Democratic at the time, including some members of the KKK. But party labels don't translate apples to apples across the centuries, because Republicans were the moderate progressive party of the time, dedicated to ending slavery, while Southern Democrats were conservative populists, largely rural and rallying around states' rights, defending slavery as an issue of constitutional liberty, while many ex-Confederates refused to recognize their loss by embracing something called lost cause mythology. Now, the influence of these ideas extended beyond the Deep South. Even President Andrew Johnson, a Southern war Democrat who succeeded Abraham Lincoln, reflected many of these positions. He gave amnesty to Confederate leaders, approved of so-called black codes that amounted to slavery without the chains, and vetoed bills designed to move toward equal rights. Johnson vetoed the 1866 Civil Rights Act, saying it was a stride to centralization, while raising the specter of special rights for the former slaves, arguing that the distinction of race and color is by this bill made to operate in favor of the colored and against the white race. Now, if contemporary echoes come to mind, it's also interesting to note the Atlantic described Johnson as being egotistic to the point of mental disease and insincere as well as stubborn. But under Johnson's successor, President Ulysses S. Grant, the 15th Amendment was passed, giving black men the right to vote. For many, though, victory was short-lived as white mob violence, often framed as self-defense to social chains, became widespread, and soon segregation replaced slavery in the South for a century. That's why the tools that were used, voter intimidation, voter suppression, election subversion, resonate to this day. It's also a timely reminder that even rights enshrined in the Constitution can be rolled back if they are not enforced on a local level. Look, every child is born innocent, but every citizen needs to understand the history of our country, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
New CNN reporting that Homeland Security and national security officials fear that Russia could significantly exploit U.S. political divisions during the upcoming midterm elections. We're going to have more on that in just a moment. Following this morning, is Russia preparing to once again meddle in the U.S. election, the midterm elections coming up? It is a possibility. National security officials are watching very closely. Up next, the challenges of keeping the ballot box safe from foreign interference.
There are growing concerns among national security officials that Russia could interfere with yet another major U.S. election, this time taking advantage of the midterm elections in November.
Spokes and pedal cages. Yes, Joe Biden explains how he took a tumble off his bike. President Biden this morning saying he's doing just fine after falling off his bike in Rehoboth Beach over the weekend. The president was biking near his Delaware home with the First Lady when his foot got caught on the pedals.
Okay, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling great. What happened was, ever you guys ride bikes? Well, they have some that have this thing you put your toe in that constrains your foot so it doesn't slide off the pedal. When I was getting off the bike, it got stuck on the right side.
President Biden taking a spill while biking in Delaware this weekend. It's not the first presidential stumble in history. We'll have the list.
President Biden took a spill on his bike in Delaware this weekend. Yes, presidents are human and they stumble just like the rest of us. Gerald Ford Remember, on the stairs of Air Force One, it earned him a running gag on Saturday Night Live.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Okay. Gotta see the fall. In 2002, George W. Bush, he had a pretzel malfunction. He fainted briefly after choking on a pretzel while watching a football game.
My mother always said, when you're eating pretzels, chew before you swallow. Listen to your mother. I feel great.
Listen to your mother. Well, Donald Trump once appeared. He once appeared in public with bandages on his hand. One of them blood-soaked. In fact, the White House said that he had scratched it while joking around with his teenage son. And then you remember back in the Obama years, the president suffered a fat lip after taking an elbow during a basketball game, and he got a dozen stitches. Just like us.
It
Just
happens.
like us.
It
Sure does.
CNN's coverage continues right now.
You're not the only Democrat to say that. Are you okay with cutting the gas tax, even though Secretary Granholm said yesterday on this program that would mean cutting into the funding that is at the root of the already funded infrastructure bill? I mean, she said that's really a big hang-up if you're going to cut the gas tax.
This is not aimed at Biden as can he win conversation. That's a whole nother. There's going to be a whole different conversation after the midterms about where Biden stands. How well can the Democrats do in 2024 if he is a standard bearer? But I do think this age question needs to be looked at. It needs to be explored more fully by medical professionals and by others. But common sense. Most corporations in this country, they ask their CEOs to step down around 66, 67. I don't know of any CEO recently, unless he owns a big part of the company, who has been a CEO in their 80s.
Yeah, and now you got senators serving into their 90s. David Gerken, thanks so much.
Yep.
There's no question in my mind that Joe Biden is doing exactly what needs to be done for this great country of ours. We all know that our democracy is teetering on edge. We need a Joe Biden to get us through this rough patch. I'm just saying that if he chooses not to run again, first on my list after him will be Kamala Harris. Everybody knows that none of us are getting any younger, and we all tend to adjust our activities based upon what time it is at any given juncture, and he'll do the same.
But he still believes that Biden will be fine in 2024.
Yeah, Biden is doing what people wanted him to do, which was not be President Trump, not be tweeting at 4 o'clock in the morning, not, embarrass us on an international stage. But there are limitations to what Joe Biden can do, even physically. He can't travel as intensely. His speeches his speeches, you have to pay attention a little bit more as he speaks, because he speaks slowly and things like that. That just, with age comes limitations. And I think that, Clyburn's not going to turn on his boy, Joe Biden. Clyburn's not going to turn on Kamala Harris, a former, black member of Congress. But I think there are limitations. Age comes with limitations. And if Democrats want to get to where they want to go, they might need to look at the next generation.
This is a generational discussion, too, because it's personal for Clyburn and for Steny Hoyer and Nancy Pelosi, the top 3 leaders of House Democrats, because they're all over the age of 80, and a milestone that Biden himself is rapidly approaching as he turns 80 this November. And so I think there's a difference of opinion in the party about what the best bet is for the future. I think there's a lot of Democrats, certainly in Congress, obviously in Biden's White House, who believe, look, there's just nobody else that's a better option for us in 24, especially if it comes to beating Trump, because he did it before. And so look at the precedent. But there's voices elsewhere in the party, many of which won't go on the record, but that are also, I think, of the view that, look, we have to have a primary in 2024 and field the best possible candidate for the future. And that, nominating Joe Biden once again just does not make a whole lot of sense, given some of the challenges he could have with age 2 years from now. This is not going away.
Right.
We'll take a look at it. I think that, there are a lot of people in the Democratic Party who are waiting in the wings, and they feel like the Democratic Party should have done more to try to mold and elevate people who are younger than 80 to help lead the party. And I'm not trying to be ageist.
I've been called, a rhino, a squish, a bedwetter.